So what I want you to do is start out, and we're just going to work down the table there. What I want to do is start out by giving me just within a minute 2 things. One is, what are the policy credentials you bring to the table in terms of background? I assume you want to give back to your community, you want to love motherhood and apple pie, all that stuff. Okay, but what are the real experience and educational or whatever professional credentials you bring to the table that are going to make a difference? Number one. Number two is, what are the 3 policy, or what are the 3 issues that are most important to you and that we should be considering and that you think should be issues here? And by that, I don't want you to expand on them. I just want to know what the topic is right now. That way, because what I find is we can mix and match, and often they overlap, sometimes they don't. But that'll help us set the agenda for the rest of the discussion. So, Judy, take it away.
Great. Well, thanks. I'm so happy that you're doing this and you're having this this editorial board meeting for the Berkeley School Board meeting.
Yeah, and I'm so happy we're almost done with these.
I bet you are. So I'm really excited to be running for school board. This is, for me, a next step in my kind of efforts over the last 10 years working with Berkeley Unified School District in a variety of different capacities. So I come to this really with 2 sets of credentials. On the one hand, I have worked at the site level. I've had children in Berkeley Unified School District for the past 10 years. And throughout that time, I worked first at the site level in the PTA, as a PTA president, and on PTA council, and then the site chair, because I realized that really, site council chair, that a lot of the, where the rubber meets the road is really around budgets and where we're applying the funds that we have, both at the district level as well as at the site level. And I was able to work under the mentorship of a great principal who was really committed to equity and also making sure to serve all children in the schools. And I think because of that, I was one of 2 community members who was appointed by the superintendent as a community representative, myself and Eric Weaver, community representative for the budget, the superintendent's budget advisory committee. So that's one hat. And the other hat, as far as my work with Berkeley Unified School District, has been, I'm an executive director of an organization called Our Family Coalition.
Yeah, and I've read all your background, so you don't have to run all that.
Great. So through my work at Our Family Coalition, one of the things we do is we're a local representative for a national project called Welcoming Schools. And we've been working with the district first to help improve the anti-harassment and discrimination policies around LGBTQ and family diversity issues, and then bringing kind of an anti-bullying frame that we're working within the elementary schools, a resource that works with the whole school around anti-bullying and allyship. And so I've been working both at the school site level. I've done professional development with hundreds of teachers around the state and have worked very closely with Berkeley Unified School District. And this board has been very committed to helping to make sure that we have that resource to build. It's like a preventative framework to make sure that we are that we're teaching kids allied behavior at a young level.
So what are your 3 issues?
Okay. Well, let me just say, to finish my qualifications. So I've been working for 25 years in the nonprofit sector. I bring skills. I have a law degree and a planning degree. I have been working towards policy development in a variety of different issues at the local, state, and federal level. And I can go into that more.
Just a technical point. You have a law degree. Are you a practicing attorney?
I'm now not. I practiced for about 12 or 15 years, and then I became the executive director of Our Family Coalition in the nonprofit sector. So, and in part of that work I did for a short period of time was working in the private sector and represented a school district. On my 4 areas, I'm going to say 4 because there are 4 that I have. If that's okay with you.
Stretch the rules.
So the first one is really looking at quality education. So that has to do with both closing the achievement gap as well as making sure that school is challenging for all of our students. And I know we'll go into that more later. Spending wisely. I have a lot of experience with budgets and fiscal responsibility. I've grown my organization about 5 times since I took the helm of that organization. So I think budgeting and how we spend our money and targeted is very important. Safe and welcoming schools is an area where I bring a lot of personal experience. And I guess I can just maybe fold into that family engagement, which is another top priority.
And so wait a minute. Quality education, spending wisely, safe and welcoming schools, you said there were 4.
And family engagement, I folded it in, so I would follow the rules.
So we collapsed
to follow the
3.
rules, right.
Okay, Tracy.
I want to be compliant.
You see, now you're on.
So my credentials are that I am a multiple subjects
Don't worry
credentialed
about it.
teacher, trained in California at USF is where I got my multiple subjects teaching credential. And I have 5 years of classroom teaching experience from preschool through second grade. I have also been very active in the PTA. I was PTA president, I'm PTA secretary currently of the Longfellow Middle School. I'm also on the PTA council as the education chair. Previously, for the last 2 years, I was secretary of the PTA council, also on the superintendent's budget advisory committee.
This is the
as
same committee
a
you
council
both are on?
member. If you mentioned, and also was on the school governance council at Rosa Parks for 3 years.
Good, I love it. Look, let me see if I've got this right. We got 2 people who are on the budget advisory committee. We got a school board member. Good. So when I ask the questions about budgets, you guys should all know them, right? Okay, good. There'll be no excuses. Okay,
Yeah.
Okay, go ahead.
And then I also, over the last 6 or so years in the public schools, I've been volunteering in the schools and using my skills as a teacher to work one-on-one with students.
Are you currently teaching?
No, I'm not.
Okay. And did you teach in Berkeley schools?
I did not.
Okay.
I did not.
Okay. Go ahead. I'm sorry.
That's okay. So I've worked one-on-one with students and with small groups of students in schools, volunteering pretty much 2 to 3 days a week for the last 6 years or so in the schools to use my skills. And as far as and I would also like to say, as PTA president, some of my accomplishments at Rosa Parks in particular were pretty much doubling the budget as far as our fundraising goals, and also things like turnout and outreach was a really big thing of what we tried to accomplish there through surveys and helping. I was on the committee that helped develop the survey for the community.
So what are your 3 issues?
So my 3 issues are, first, I would say engaging our students. So we need to engage our students and make our learning meaningful. And to me, that is somewhat in response to our testing. I think that
we'll come back to the expansion of it. Yeah, just give me the sort of laundry list first. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. So making sure our students are engaged in their learning and their learning is meaningful. My second big thing would be professional development. Looking at the professional development that we're doing and making sure it's research based. It's what the teachers need, and then another one for me is oversight. Is actually looking at some kind of a cohesive evaluation system of our school leaders. So for example, our principals that we have.
Beatrice.
Okay, I am the sitting school board member. I've been.
I got that.
I will be 4 years with experience sitting on the board.
Okay.
I've also am one of the co-founders of the 2020 vision, which grounded the school district and the city in creating a citywide partnership in how we address the achievement gap. So I've been part of this for longer than probably I started working on this since 1997. From very grassroots group to moving the city to sitting on the school board. So this is something that's been very much part of not just my own self-interest, but a community interest to lead the district in addressing the achievement gap. I have community-based experience of over 32 years working with the same organization, growing my organization from one site, from one child care center to 4 programs. I am have been an early childhood advocate, which means I work with a lot with early childhood to up to school age children and families. I've grown from a youth worker all the way now to a school board member. I have a broad spectrum of experience working in Berkeley, organizing with families in Berkeley.
So what are your issues?
My issues are addressing the achievement gap with this particular focus on addressing the issues and the gap that we have with our African American males. Also, English language learners. Those are the students that have been failed through our school district over years, but are now beginning to make progress along with our African American males. Also, the parent engagement. It's really important to our district to engage our families, to welcome our families so that their students are successful.
So you got achievement gap, parent engagement.
English language learners.
Okay. I was sort of thinking of that as part of the achievement gap issue, but okay.
But we're developing a master plan to how we
Okay.
serve our English language learners.
Okay. Okay, let's start with you, Beatrice. And looking over the data, I'm curious, what's your assessment of the funding levels of the school at this point?
The funding levels?
Yeah.
Berkeley's probably one of the few districts in the county that has a reserve of $8 million right now. And that's something that if Proposition 30 does not pass, will be depleted. We're one of the schools.
8 million, you
8
said?
million right now. So if Proposition 30 does not pass, we essentially will make it through this year.
Okay,
But
and 8 million on a
13
general fund
excuse me?
on a general fund
In
of,
our between our reserve and general
right,
fund.
yeah. What is the general fund amount? I haven't gone back and
It's
sat.
about 130.
So it's about an 8% reserve.
Yeah. So that funding will be depleted in 13-14, and going into further will be more in deficit. So it's very important to pass Proposition 30. If the good news is the Proposition 30 does pass, then we go back into our Budget Advisory Committee to really address how are we going to use these funds into the future and addressing those priorities that we do have. Right now, even if whether it passes or not, the Budget Advisory Committee needs to meet in order to plan what's ahead.
Okay. Tracy, what's your evaluation?
Of our current funding?
Mm-hmm. Your current financials and finance
Yeah.
situation.
Well, same. I mean, I think if things don't pass, we'll be okay for about a year or so. And, you know, being that we have our BSEP money, which is about 25 million of that total money
Your
that we're
which
talking
money?
about. I'm sorry. So it's the parcel tax. So it's
Parcel
the
tax money.
the Berkeley Schools
What did you
Excellent.
call it?
BSEP, Berkeley Schools Excellent Project. Is that right? What it stands for? Sorry.
Parcel tax, right?
Parcel
And
tax.
as I recall, you have two
It's
of them,
about
do I remember
25
correctly?
million.
Yes.
You have 2 parcel taxes and then you got your
Bond
bonds.
Some
Sure.
bonds, yeah.
Yeah, okay, go ahead.
Right. So, I mean, so the BSEP money is what has actually been able to keep us ahead of the game as far as surrounding districts, as far as class sizes. Some districts surrounding us are dealing with 40 kids already in a lower elementary, kindergarten, first grade, second grade, but we're still maintaining our 20 and below for third grade and below. So our BSEP pays for about a third of our teachers, I believe.
That's about right.
Something like that. So, and that's going to be up in 2016. That measure. So, I mean, I think as far again as surrounding districts, we're faring much better because of that, and because of funding the teachers and the music programs and a lot of the other programs that BSEP funds. If Prop 30, as Beatrice says, doesn't pass, or 38. Then we're going to have to look to what's going to happen a year from now with those reserves, assuming, you know, hopefully the economy will get better and things will happen, but we can't count on that, obviously.
Yeah, I mean, it's clear when we look at other districts around us that Berkeley Unified School District has done a really good job, really in large part in thanks to the Berkeley voters for supporting us so generously. So we do have a fairly robust budget. We're really lucky to have the $8 million in reserve above our our required reserve. And again, if the Budget Advisory Committee did make the decision to maintain a budget so that education wouldn't be interrupted, if Prop 30 doesn't pass, or I guess Prop 38, but I'm supporting Prop 30, and I think it's the most likely to pass between the two. So I think we have a strong budget. I think the question comes to how are we spending the money, and are we targeting our money the most effectively to meet the needs of our students and meet the goals that have recently been reevaluated and reset by the district. And I think our recent scores show that in a large part we're doing a great job in starting to close the achievement gap. And one of the things that I think it's really would be a good time to do is to take kind of a deep dive into the budget and really making sure that we're aligning spending with this. Just because you have money, you know, you have to be vigilant about how we're spending it and make sure that we're preparing, particularly I think preparing for the new Common Core standards, which are going to come online in 2014, which I think will show a radical shift in many ways in our educational system, not just here, but in the 48 states that have adopted them. So I guess I think we're very lucky. I think all the things that have been said about where we get our money, we're very fortunate. We're lucky to have bonds so that we're able to have updated facilities, and we have a whole list of priorities there. And so I think the work now is working with our very able Javetta Cleveland, the interim co-superintendent, who's a really good administrator, to figure out exactly where we're spending our money and make sure that it's best aligned.
Yeah, so let me play devil's advocate with you guys for a second. You guys are spending something like $12,000 a student, if I remember correctly. According, at least,
I think we get about I think it's about 2,000, like through our BSAP, through our parcel, it adds about 2,000 per student to what.
Let me get the numbers.
Okay. So I think we get about
expenditures here per student basis is $12,478. This was actually 9-10 data because it's the most current. Actually, I think I can get 10-11, didn't I? Yeah, let's get 10-11. I'm sorry. Higher technology is great. I'm sorry. It's still the same. 12,596. You're 144% of average for unified school districts across the state. The statewide average being 8,743. And one of the big ticket items is on your revenue side. You actually take in a little bit more than that on the revenue side on a per capita basis, or did. And about a third of all of your money on a per capita basis or per student basis is from other local revenue, and we know what that is, right? That's your parcel tax primarily. 3256 of the 4344, so it's a big chunk of it's the parcel tax. All good, no problem with that from our perspective. People want to spend money. We're really happy people are investing. What I'm unclear on, though, is frankly on expenditures budget of which for 10-11 was revenues of $116 million. Why you only have an $8 million reserve?
That we only have an $8 million?
Yeah.
You have school districts that don't have any reserve.
That's
They
true.
were
You
tapping
don't
into
have
it.
any. But I don't know of any other school district that's as well funded as you guys are. Do you? In this area, I know. I don't know. And frankly, one of the things I wanted to look at, because to us it's one of the big indicators, is how well you're paying your teachers. Because I look at Richmond, for example, and that district is struggling. It's below the average statewide in paying its teachers, and that's cool. I certainly assume you guys are doing better, because Richmond complains you guys steal away all their teachers. But I'm just trying to understand, broadly, why, it seems like you guys shouldn't be sitting with that kind of money teetering quite as closely as you feel. All three seem to feel you're teetering if Prop 30 doesn't pass. I get it. It's going to be a problem. I get it. It's going to, but for you guys, unlike most of them, I don't think the sky should be falling.
Yeah. No, you're right. But I also think that the last 4 years have been very tenuous in not knowing exactly what the governor is going to do.
Absolutely.
The cutbacks.
Absolutely.
Child care has been severely cut. Our monies have gone away. That helped fill the gap, and then we have slowly, without falling off the cliff, have been pulling back some of our funding. So in essence, this was our saving grace in preparation for this unknown, this next unknown. Everybody is in this place of not knowing. We are one of the few school districts that won't have to count back our days in the middle of the school year as a result of having that reserve. We're one of the full school districts that won't have to be sending out layoff notices. So, and we are one of the few school districts that have actually given a 1% bonus to our teachers
Well,
and our
so,
staff.
so let's just out of curiosity, and I don't mean, because you raised a good question, I don't know the answer. Actually, on a per capita basis, per student basis, from say 4 years earlier, 3 years earlier, your revenues and your expenditures are up. Which you're probably the only district in that case.
Well, that was a lot of our
Yeah.
money that came into the school district.
Yeah. Okay. Well. Okay. So.
That
what-
no longer is in the.
Okay.
June 30th was the last of that money. So this year. And so what our former superintendent did is make sure that we weren't having big holes and gaps in our district as a result of that money going away. That we began to fill it back in, where it was filling in for teachers, we began to fill it in. So in many ways it was good planning on behalf of our superintendent, former superintendent, and our Javetta Cleveland. So I think we have done the right thing in making sure, first of all, that we have a safety net as a school district. Without that safety net, I think we would be in dire straits, as a lot of other school districts are. We're one of the few, I think 14 school districts in the state of California that are not submitting a budget in line.
So what do you see as the scenario, Beatrice, if Prop 30 doesn't pass?
Prop doesn't 30 pass, we're going to have to seriously look at everything and all possibilities about.
But how dire is it going to be?
It'll be seriously dire in probably 14, 15. 13, 14 will have some deficit. It'll be under $1 million, but going further out, it gets more serious. So a lot of our critical decisions don't need to happen right now for 13, 14.
Because $1 million is
Under $1 million.
$1 million is far less than 1%. Well,
Right.
it's significantly less than 1%
Right.
budget.
Yeah.
This is not.
Maybe
I've been spending too much time talking to cities and other school boards and school districts where, frankly, they're getting squeezed hugely. I'm just trying to get perspective here on what's
This is
happening.
going to help us in the interim. But again, it means going back to the plan, whether it passes or not, we still have to talk. We still have to look at ourselves and say, what our next steps are. And that's a community decision with our staff and all those who are impacted by this, our union leaders and our parents and community. It's definitely a bigger discussion with everybody.
We also have, I believe, an issue of funding that we've been getting for mental health, so that they're going to be changing, most likely, the formula as to how we receive that money. So it used to be on a per need basis, and now they're most likely going to change the formula to ADA, to the amount of students that we have. And
what kind of money are we talking about? I don't know what in the scale of things. What are we?
The
talking
mental
about?
health dollars from the state.
Yeah. This is not. While it's a program that's important, I'm sure.
Yeah,
in the grand scheme of the whole budget, is this very much money that we're talking about?
Well, it's a lot more money that we would have to come up with if we didn't get it.
From our
so
general
it's
fund.
millions.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm
From
just
the
trying to
general,
get the scale.
From the general fund, so it's. Well, I don't know if they do it on an annual basis. It's hundreds of thousands, but I don't know.
Okay.
That funds a lot of the programs, and Berkeley, what they found, we have more kids of higher need when it comes to mental health than surrounding districts, but so we will suffer on that end if they change the formula.
I'm sorry, were you done?
No. And this can be a little free flowing.
Okay.
This is not, like I said, this is a.
Okay.
Your minute.
This is not right. Yeah.
Nobody's
So we're
holding
used
up-
to that
nobody's
format of
holding
like,
up, you
yeah.
have 30
Right.
seconds
Nobody's
left.
holding up. You have 30
Right.
seconds. Just don't filibuster. That's all I ask. And because
Gotcha.
frankly, this is a much more valuable way to have a discussion.
Well, we're all agreed to have a positive.
Pardon?
We all have agreed to have a positive campaign.
Yeah,
So.
good.
I think that another thing that's a little bit tricky is I totally agree with the instability. Every year, it's been 10 years that I've been in the district, and certainly over the last 5 of them, it feels like every year there's this fear that the state is going to, really like rip the rug out from under our feet, and those of our teachers, and there's pink slip notices, and there's a lot of panic. And we have had good planning to be able to, and, you know, I think pressure on Sacramento changes things, and then in the end we end up being better than we thought we were going to be. So we're always kind of planning for that contingency, but we also have something, getting back to your per capita question, because BSEP, the parcel tax, it has very specific requirements in it that we can't just use. It doesn't just go into the general fund and then we can use the money in any way we want. The taxpayers have decided that, for example, and a big chunk of that money goes to the teachers, which is to keep class sizes small. And so one of the reasons why we have this high per capita student ratio is because of that, because we're spending more money on our teachers to have more teachers so that we can keep our K through 3 class sizes down to 20 and then 26, and then it gets larger on the upper grade. So, you know, that doesn't totally answer the question, but that is where you find a lot of that.
Your point being that you're mandated to keep the class sizes small, so your per student cost must be high.
And there's there are other requirements that come. There are other.
And as I recall, it's a K3 requirement, right?
Well, it's K3.
It's average class
It's
size.
average class size, but there's also BSEP includes the 20 is at K3, and then the class
So
sizes
it's like
get
an
larger.
average
there
of
were
20
higher
at the high
limits,
school,
right.
and so it covers an average for each.
Got it. Okay.
Right. And so there's a whole very complex chart that goes out about, because then
Because
you know
school
you don't
financing isn't complex enough already.
right, and we don't just fund, and there needs to be equity. There we have a collective bargaining agreement, so all of the teachers are all on the same scale. You don't get paid different if you're paid under BSEP, and so it's that does make it a little bit more. That makes it more. It's more expensive, but it more means that we're investing more.
I'm sorry, specific teachers designated as BSEP teachers?
No, the money is transferred
it's just
over.
Right. I mean, it's pretty
Right.
functional. Right?
And there's but there is that requirement, so that
Right.
allows us across the board to have those higher per capita,
Right.
and we stick with that, and that's something that has been really obviously, as well as things like art and music that other districts have lost, and putting money into our libraries, or something that we do work at our family coalition around the state, and sometimes we have to struggle to get people to buy the 15 books that you need to do this program, whereas in Berkeley there's funds to be able to have the books in every site, and sometimes in every classroom. So those are values that I think Berkeley voters have voted for, and that it is more expensive, but it's because of the things specifically that we value. And as far as Prop 30, I think the Budget Advisory Committee did make the decision that it would kind of, just like this state will have trigger cuts, we would have the recommendation for, ultimately the board, was that the reserve would be used to maintain. Of course, the Budget Advisory Committee and the board ultimately would meet to make decisions to see where we could possibly still save.
Were you on the committees at the same time?
I wasn't appointed a voting member. Yes, we were on the same.
You were on the same time.
Right.
Okay.
And I was board liaison.
Yeah, we were all
I've
there.
been on
So you guys know each other.
Yeah, this is old home week. Okay.
You know, so I also think what's interesting, I mean, you know, we're not going to be, you know, we're going to have to make tough decisions like everybody else if this doesn't happen, if Prop 30 doesn't happen. And I think, but the fact that we have the BSEP money that others don't have, it's something that we're going to have to look at and make hard decisions about. I mean, so we're using the majority of that money to go towards class size reduction. We're also using that money for wonderful music programs for grades 3, 4, and 5. Now, you know, right now the third grade, it's recorders. So all the third graders, they get a recorder for free. They have music instruction, I believe it's at least once a week. And then it actually in 4th and 5th grade goes up to twice a week with an instrument that's free, you know, which is wonderful. But there's a lot of these programs that we might, I mean, who knows if it comes down to making decisions, to deciding between class size or hiring teachers or implementing very necessary professional development to get a curriculum out there and floating. These are hard decisions that we're going to have to make. And one of the main things I think is important as a board member is the communications with our community and building trust with the community and having a really respectful dialogue so that we can talk about these things, so that we can hear, okay, we know these are things that are important to all of us, but now here's our situation. This is our financial situation. And these are the things that are on the chopping block, and
It's-
we need to decide.
It's important to know that there is a BSEP committee that represents all of our schools. And these are people that have been elected to be on the board to help make us make decisions and recommendations to the board. The board does not make isolated decisions about the BSEP funding. There are mandates that we have that the voters have approved on how we will spend our money. So it's not a decision that's going to be made total and the board says, oh, we're going to be doing this differently. No,
Right.
these are
There's a big
funds, and
oversight
this is
committee.
the oversight committee provides direction and tells us and gives us recommendations that the board does consider, very much considers in terms of, and has very good weight because it's something that's important to our school district. So it's not something that suddenly can be changed. It's also funds that are audited on an annual basis. All the funds are audited and accountable for.
Very
So
open.
we can't just suddenly change our decision
No.
about how we structure the BSEP funding.
But it does expire in 2016, which I think is another interesting thing
But
to
it
look
also
at.
shows, we have to demonstrate to the voters again in terms
Right.
of
Now remind me, there's a
Wait, can
second
I-
parcel tax though too, do I
The-
remember correctly?
the bond.
measure-
the
well-
No,
bond.
not the bond, but don't you have a second, or is it all wrapped in one
It's
parcel
all
tax?
wrapped.
Measure it,
It's all
it's,
wrapped
yeah,
in
it's
one.
all.
Okay,
It's kind of-
okay.
Yeah,
That's
I
right,
mean-
you had an
right,
earlier
there's
one that was
some-
only
yeah.
2 years,
Right.
and then
And then it was
you-
extended till
then it was
2016.
extended.
But we
Okay.
did just renew our bond measures.
Right,
for
I
our
remember that
2010.
well.
Right,
Yeah,
But I
remember
want
that.
to. I think it's a really good point because it's the funds are audited and they're also. One of the things that was really impressive with the last superintendent, at least, well, from where I sat, it'd be interesting to hear what you think, Beatrice, that the superintendent was able to work very well both with the board around the general budget and with the P&O committee, which is this oversight committee, to help make sure that both, following the will of the voters and the will of Berkeley, of where we want priorities, and also helping to make sure, to help have a good bridge, be some good communication to make sure that some of the programs funds that came out of parcel tax were also supporting the priorities of the district. And one example of that is one of the things that I'm most excited about in the district, which is what we call the RTI squared, response to instruction and intervention. And this is
How do you guys keep the alphabet soup straight?
I know, I'm sorry, but this is really, I know I'm
Thank you,
such a
Angie.
geek
Welcome
and
to education.
like a wonk, but I do think that this is one of the things that is actually changing our schools, because it's a way in which we have different tiers of intervention for students with different levels of need, and it makes sure that no kid really is invisible, because there's snapshot meetings of each child several times a year to make sure that we say what are the different needs of that child. And then some children just need things at the tier 1 intervention, basic climate things that are kind of school-wide. Some children need things at a second level, which is more intense interventions, and some at tier 1. And it's all kinds of interventions. Some of them are literacy, some of them are mental health, some of them are disability. And it's very, some is school climate, make sure kids are not socially isolated and at risk of depression. And so now we have funding to do this at every elementary school and the middle schools, which allows this. So and now what we're working on is trying to make this uniform, because it's been very spotty.
So let me isolate one thing that I'm really curious about. Is there anything from a policy perspective you guys disagree on?
I don't know. I mean, I think that when I hear, this RTI squared, I think it has been effective. I think it's important. But one of the things as an educator that I also want to see a focus on is engaging our students in their learning and making their learning meaningful. Because all the research shows that when you do that, kids learn at a higher rate, they test at a higher rate, they absorb the information at a higher rate. So one of my things is I think that we really need to look at things that have been well researched and also things that surrounding districts are doing successfully. I don't necessarily, and I'm not that we are reinventing the wheel necessarily, but I think we need to be careful not to do that. I think there's a lot of information out there, both from individual schools in Oakland, individual schools in Berkeley, and school districts that are out there. And I guess to me, in part, that goes back to professional development and from leadership saying that this is what we want our learning to look like. We want our kids to want to come to school, we want it to be engaging, and we want it to be meaningful. Now, I think that the early intervention that starts now in the kindergarten, I think it's important, but I also think from a developmental perspective and knowing as a teacher what some children look like at the beginning of kindergarten, they're just totally different that year later because we're pushing all of our requirements lower. So it used to be that in first grade you learn reading, Now we learn it in kindergarten. And so we're taking things developmentally that might be somewhat inappropriate, which most, educators across the state really agree with. But at this point, this is what's
Okay,
coming
so
down.
that-
But wait, I
that-
want to clarify something, because RTI squared for me. I totally agree that children should be engaged in learning, and I think that there's a lot of different ways to do that. I don't think there's any disagreement there at all. One of the things that excites me about this frame, having now worked with a positive behavioral support, a positive behavioral support type model of climate work in schools, is that one of the things that's so great is it provides a frame so that kids can be engaged, because I think that in order for students to be able to come and show up and learn and be engaged, they have to also be seen and recognized, appreciated, and us to believe that we are expecting them to succeed. And I think in order to do that, we have to be very intentional about it. RTI Squared is a very research-validated model, and the great thing is that there are schools right here in Berkeley where they've been doing, it was previously called something named Ulysses, where they've been trying it, and those are the schools where we've seen the best scores and the best engagement of students. Let me just say one more thing. The other thing that kind of goes with professional development, I do professional development, I train teachers. I think professional development is really great, and another thing that the teachers are asking for is professional learning communities, which is a way to do professional development also in a peer model, where you're bringing in different things that work into a peer. And I feel like we need to create richer schools and learning environments both for the teachers and the students. So I think there's agreement there, and I'm confused by why I think RTI is one way of getting to it.
I think one of the things that has worked for Berkeley that we've been striving to do is to start from the leadership, and that's our principals. One of the things that I saw when I came into the school district is that we had some great things happening in some schools, and we had some inconsistencies in other schools. Now what we're seeing in our school district is more uniformity in terms of it should be across our district that all our leaders, all our principals are providing this professional learning community, providing RTI. It's not just because of one teacher, one school site, but everybody. And that's what we've been pushing for.
Standards, so to
Yes,
speak?
standards, expectations, and raising and supporting our principals so that they can support our teachers. I think district-wide, those are the kinds of things that we've been trying to do, and I think we've been successful in doing that, in terms of making sure that 12 of our schools all of our schools, our middle schools and high schools, are now above the state average for API scores. And so I think that's the part for me that's really been important, to making sure that we are replicating the successes that we're having at a classroom, at a school site, district-wide, not just sitting in one school in one classroom for one teacher.
I don't hear any real disagreement here, maybe a little emphasis.
I don't think we do have a disagreement necessarily on what we think is important.
I think what you're finding the difference is in terms of the experience.
But I also
who is grounded in the experience and in the knowledge of how the district works and how to support our students further.
So I think that from my teaching experience, that because I know firsthand how that learning environment is created and what needs to happen, so I do think that absolutely what Judy said, these things about the school-wide climate and is really essential. But one of the things that I see on an inconsistent level from school to school or class to class is that happening within the classroom. So school-wide, we have things that happen. We know that staff, they see a kid doing something great, they get a weighted B card. But within the classrooms, it's very consistent as to how much they work on building their classroom community. And I think that beginning in kindergarten, it is essential. And it cuts down on playground issues, on fighting, on all of that kind of stuff. So I think we all agree that that's essential.
For Berkeley, it starts in preschool.
Berkeley
has a preschool program that's where we're starting our emphasis and making sure that our students are ready for school. That's where we're starting. We're not starting at K already.
Right.
We've already provided that response to intervention at the preschool level so that those students, when they go into kindergarten, it's not a lapse of 6 months to be able to address the students.
Let me ask you guys a question, and let me start with you, Beatrice. What are the district's unfunded liabilities?
Unfunded liabilities?
Yeah.
Okay. No.
Do you guys have?
Well, I know it's an issue citywide, pensions.
Clearly, it's an issue at the city level. You don't have the pension issue because you're part of Cal STRS.
Right.
Yeah, but do you have retiree health benefits?
Yeah, we do.
How well funded is it?
How well funded it is? I know it's something that going out into the future that we definitely need to address. I think it's something it's not immediate, but it's something that certainly more planning and discussion needs to happen going out further.
Do you know how big the problem is?
No. It has risen to the top at this point, but
It
it
has
is
not.
no.
Well, I know
but
that-
it is something that I know that we've discussed that into the future that we need to have better planning.
And I also believe, I think there were discussions between the teachers union and the school board just about premiums and negotiations within recent years.
Yeah, that's a really good question. I know that it came up during our budget discussions, because I remember, Devetta Cleveland, who I know I've mentioned again, I sound like I'm her, like her fan club or something, but I do think she's very, very highly skilled administrator and provides really, I think, conservative in a good way, financial oversight on the district, and so she, I know, she reported on it at the Budget Advisory Committee, and I'm sorry, I can't remember the figure, because I know that she was talking about, making sure that we have, that we have the reserve available to be able to meet needs, but we didn't talk about a long term trajectory, so I'm sorry about that, not having that.
Let's see, I'm just trying to see whether.
Am I remembering that correctly?
Yeah.
I meant to check this before we got in here. Well, I'll have to check it and find out. I'd be surprised if you don't have a significant unfunded liability problem, but so but when I talk about OPEB, it probably doesn't ring a bell to any of you guys then.
When you talk about
OPEB, other post-employment benefits. Okay. It's been the bane of Richmond School District's existence in many school districts. That's why I ask. What do you guys offer your teachers in retirement health benefits? Do you know?
Their benefits are up to, I believe, 65. Their benefits if they retire.
They get health benefits until
Yeah.
65, and then Medicare kicks in and stuff.
I mean, there is an issue right now, I believe, at the school district, because just about the health benefits question, because there's teacher contribution, and that amount has gone up. In fact, the teachers just are getting the news now about this is true for all employers where there's a contribution. Obviously, healthcare costs go up, but where that becomes that continues to increase as healthcare costs increase. And this year, the district was able to give a 1% bonus, but that doesn't even, I don't even know if that offsets the cost. So for me, you were asking about teacher salaries, and it's a very important question. And another part of that is also, as an employer, like now in my private and as an employer of a nonprofit, we have I'm always give COLAs to my staff because cost of living does go up, and it's a concern to me, although I certainly understand the limitations. When you have, it's really important that your teachers and your employees know that you appreciate them.
So what do we know about where teacher salaries rank, and does that matter for Berkeley?
It does matter, because it matters in terms of how we can retain our teachers, and how they can feel supported, not just through their salary, but also through the support that the district is providing to them professionally.
And so where do you?
So I can give. Oh, I'm
how do
sorry.
we rank? I don't know. But
I've
I
been
definitely
told.
look
I've
at,
asked that question.
I think it's.
Right.
I think it's competitive,
That's what I've
but
been told.
I
It's
don't think
competitive.
it's where we will get. I think it's competitive, but given where we are in Berkeley, in the Bay Area, I think the cost of living is very high here.
Yeah, no
I-
question
can I
about it. I'm
just-
just
yeah.
trying to
So, it's
understand. Yeah,
sorry.
go ahead.
No, I mean, again, I don't know. I knew that I had also asked the question. It's hard to find the information. I had one of the principals in our district is getting her PhD and did this budget analysis, and she sent it to me. And she's just looking at 4 different school districts and trying to find like school districts. And among those, we were by far offering the highest salaries when you looked at similar experience level. So I think our salaries are really competitive, and it is one of the reasons.
What were the others? Was the cost of living similar in the other places?
Well, I don't think that the cost of living is a big issue. One of them is, it was like Castro Valley, South San Francisco, and Western Placer. So it's not, a couple of them are in the Bay Area, but they're not the cost of living that we have here in Berkeley, and we want to have Berkeley, we want people to be able to live in the Bay Area.
So let me start with you, Judy. What do you guys?
But I can't confirm that. Looking at
So
some of these
what
papers.
are your guys' approaches to analyzing such things? If times get tough, and you guys say times could get tough, how are you going to make those decisions?
It's a really good question. So I do think that the former superintendent had a very good start by having a budget advisory committee where he brought in representatives from different sectors, teachers and administrators, school board members, I think PTA council, union reps, community
Yeah, but
members.
I'm not asking about the process. I'm asking about your analysis.
About the analysis.
Financial analysis.
Right. So then I think what we need to do is we really need to, again, I really feel like we need to take a deep dive into the budget, because up till now what we've done a lot is we have this strong district and we've kind of taken a little off here and a little off there. And I think we really need to look and evaluate and analyze the programs that we're offering and decide where our priorities, what things are costing and where we want to cut. And I just feel like we really need to take a deep dive and really ask some hard questions. I think we need to ask questions about the administrative costs. I think it's very easy for some folks to say we should take it all out of downtown, but I think that it's really important that downtown also provide really good oversight and service to its members. So that's not an easy answer. We really need to look at the different departments and see. And what will be next, what I think will be the next question, and this isn't necessarily where I think we should go, but I think the next question is always going to be class size. It's always going to be, because there's got to be give. It's class size, it's days of instruction, and so I feel like, but I think before we get there, we really need to look at where we're spending our money and find out if there are places where we are not spending efficiently, and and try to hold as close as we can to the values that people have said are really important.
I think we need to look at, research-wise, what are those things that are most important to our children learning? So does research tell us that class size is a true indicator of student success? Does research tell us that it's professional development, the most well-researched professional development? And I think that these are things that we need to look at. I mean, if we're looking at downtown and all the different departments, there might be some things there that we can make more efficient. There's some little bit of repetition, perhaps. I don't know that that's going to be where the bulk of our money will come from. And so I think that, professional development is something that I've been struggling with as far as trying to find out what percentage of our budget actually goes to professional development. Because we have all these budget pies and we have all these different funding sources. And right now under, for example, the BSEPT, it's a 9% slice of the pie, but that goes to several different things. It's looped in with professional development, technology, a whole bunch of things. So that's something that I would want to know. I would want to know, what is that formula? What is that percentage? And again, there's so much research done out there on effective teaching and effective learning, and I would want to look at what are those top 3 priorities that have to happen, and then look at where our money is. And none of it's going to be easy, and there's always going to be people falling on either side, and I think that's why we do have various representatives like the teachers and the unions and the community and the budget experts, and I think we need the educational experts to speak to that.
If you would see how we do the budget advisory, you would see how everybody dissects the budget. The staff make the recommendations, and then everything is looked at, and what's not looked at, and the questions arise that we bring it back. But one of the things, 2 things that I think that we need to do as a district is, 1, we need to bring in a grant writer. Berkeley has not done anything about having somebody who's targeted and knowing of how to access additional fundings to bring into the school district. That is an easy one that we can do. The other one is that we have buildings. We have buildings and properties that are not being used. We have Gilman, we have Oregon. So there's things that we can probably do that would also be able to generate additional revenue for the district. We're in the process of also negotiating the sale of a hillside property. So there's things that we can do, but I definitely believe that the grant writer could bring additional resources into the district.
Let me ask you something, Beatrice. Let's start with you. One of the things I was struck by looking at the data on the district was you guys have a very large number of teachers who are not classroom teachers proportionally. If you look at the pupil-student ratio versus, I forget how they give them, let me get you the exact numbers.
Teachers on special assignment. So
You know, if you look at, pupil-teacher ratio, let's go back to I keep slipping into old data. For 10-11, pupil-teacher ratio is 16.8. Average class size is 24.6. That's a really wide disparity. There are usually some teachers on doing other things, but that's almost a 3-to-2 ratio. What's going on there? What's that number about?
I don't know. I don't know if it's when you're doing the class ratio, you're looking at all classrooms or specific.
Well, what this is
this looking
your,
at K to
your
12?
number of teachers you have, number of pupils you have to the number of teachers you have. You know, and then what you have is average class size, which is the average class size, which, you know, so.
Yeah, I just saw them, and it's pretty much the K to third grade is up to 20. So
Right,
that's what I'm
well,
trying to
but
see
average
where
class size district-wide as of 10-11 was 24.6. And the pupil-teacher ratio is 16.8. What that suggests is there are a lot of teachers doing something else.
Correct.
And I'm just trying to, you know, and
Those
usually,
something
usually
else.
those two numbers, there are usually some, but usually those two numbers are a lot closer.
Those extra teachers are what are helping us in implement the response to intervention. Teacher specialists that are doing reading labs with our children, who are coaching our children in English language learners, who are supporting additional our students with also special needs. Berkeley also has many children in our school district, probably more than our surrounding district, with children with special needs. We have a
Really? In Richmond? West County?
You
In
should look at it.
Oakland?
You should look at it.
for some reason,
Or-
like I said back before,
Really?
there
should
is
look at
a.
it.
Is it
You should look at our-
disproportionately high?
It's very high.
It is.
Higher than Richmond and
how
Oakland?
much we spend.
So
you
much.
Guys, you guys don't
proportionate
have,
to
I mean,
it.
you guys have, I understand you're an urban school district, but you don't have the demographics of West County and Oakland.
It's high. I mean, I don't know if it's because in part we're identifying these kids. Right now, we're doing such a good job identifying these kids. I don't know, but I think that so what I believe a lot of these teachers are called TS, teachers on special assignment. It's something that I would really want to look into. It's something, you know, because I'm not on the board now, I only have so much information or can get information. But when I've been talking to whether it's board members or others, there are some people that do want to take a look at this, at these TSAs, and to make sure that we're.
So tell me,
Generally,
who would you guys say is the
Well,
best? Go ahead.
No.
You
No, I
didn't
know.
get a chance to.
No, that's okay. That band does surprise me, so I would also want to look into it a little bit more. But I do think it's interesting to hear you say it, because they're like, for example, I'm meeting with the people who are doing professional development. There are two people who are in charge of doing the professional development at Berkeley High. There's a lot of work we need to do around uniformity at Berkeley High. And so I know that's just two teachers, but that's teachers on special assignment who are working, you know, that's a third of our students at Berkeley High. It's like its own little city. Well, you know, you graduated from Berkeley High. It's still its own little city.
Is it
over
still
there.
its own little city?
It's still its own little city, I'm sure, with many of the same challenges and
Shall we
hopefully
say
more
that
strengths.
physically it has changed?
It has changed, I know.
The physical plant
Right.
has been rebuilt since then.
most of it.
And in the
right.
process of being.
And in the process of being improved. So I am surprised by that, but there's also, I know that there is, because there's some discussion around class size at Berkeley High, and some of that has to do with, then there are some classes where the numbers are low because there's kids with very high needs. So I think so those are two of the things that I think are causing that spread.
Yeah, but theoretically,
but that is a
those two
big,
numbers
that's going to be, should be closer.
close. What
Average.
that suggests
Yeah.
is that there are teachers
Right.
out there who aren't in the classroom and doing a lot of other things.
These
I
special
don't
assignments,
quite
yeah.
understand that.